Align, create, and empower. Now, some of you might have seen me do this before when I've run courses in the past, and sometimes this word is enable. So you could enable, empower, same kind of thing, right? Align, create, empower, control, order, predict. Now, a control, order, predict culture is where the environment and people are controlled. They are ordered what to do, and you can predict the outcome. Okay, that's what a COP organisation culture is. It does work. It does work to a degree. You only ever get what you predict. You never get any more out of people, and that's if you're lucky when it comes to it. So let me ask you a question then. In the chat box, if you could answer this question, that would be great. What kind of industry might you put into this kind of culture? What kind of businesses or industry might you put in a COP culture? So what kind of industry would run in a COP way? What do we think? What are your thoughts? How many people we got on the call? 61, right, somebody's got to have a thought. Yeah? What kind of culture? What kind of industry? So Pete's put armed forces there. Manufacturing is coming from Zoe. Military from Kerry. Manufacturing again from Gareth. Okay, great. Well, I think... I really like that answer, Alan. It certainly seems that way at the moment, doesn't it? Alan's put government, if anybody can't see the chat box. Ideally, this should be government. There should be government, national and local. At the moment, we are seeing lots of this. It's a really good example, actually. For the guys that said manufacturing and military, they tend to come out quite a lot. And I think you are right and wrong all in the same thing. Okay? So you are right. There is, I went and worked with Kraft Foods over in America. We went to the largest food manufacturing plant in the world. It was 1.7 miles long. It's where they make cheese slices and mayonnaise. And it was very COP. It was a very, very COP driven. People went onto a line. They had to do the same thing. They were told what to do. You could predict how many cheese slices in an hour you were going to get out. Absolutely. Okay, fine. Right? However, if you only run a COP organisation, you only ever get what you predict, and when things change, you struggle to change with it. Okay? Military was another example. I used to think military was a COP organisation until I was actually running one of these sessions with one of my team. Now Richard, one of my deliverers, one of my trainers, is an ex-army captain. And I was running this one day and somebody said the military, and I went, yeah, you're probably right. And Richard went, actually, you're not. And we kind of went, what? And he said, what the public see is COP. So, we see the marching, we see the programs where they've all got to make the beds and they're being shouted at and this, that and the other, and they're all drilling and make sure the gun's in the right place and all that type of stuff. He said, that's all really important, he said. However, when you've got a soldier in the middle of a battlefield and their commanding officer has been shot, you do not need them to wait for an order. You need them to be empowered and creative to get the rest of the soldiers out and come out alive. And that really hit home for me to go, actually, sometimes what we see may be COP, but actually, and the evidence stacks up to prove this, the COP organisations don't last. You need at least some ace part of an organisation to actually last. There's a great book that I read years ago. It's called Built to Last by a guy called Jim Collins, and they did lots of research into this. And what they did was they found that they had lots of the companies that lasted over 100 years. had an unchanging core ideology and an ace culture. They also had some cop in it. So you kind of want the 80-20 rule. Okay, you've got to have some cop. In your business, cop would be health and safety, for argument's sake. You know, you don't want an engineer turning up one day going, oh, I think I'll wire that CHP up a different way today, just because I feel like, no. Do it the way you've been taught. Control, order, predict. Does that make sense? Yeah? However, you might need them to be creative when a problem comes up you've never had before, for argument's sake, yeah? So you need a bit of both, but you definitely want more of this than this. If there's an 80-20 rule in play, you want this 80-20. So you need your cop stuff in place, I understand that. But you need an environment where people feel empowered to take responsibility. Aaron's just put, if you've ever watched the founder story of McDonald's, all stores were set up as cop, and Ray Kroc insisted on this. Yes, Aaron, the process was cop, but you don't want the people being cop. So it's a really good point that you raised here. All the processes can be cop, but you don't want the people to be cop. Let me go back to Kraft with an example, right? So I was over there, we'd been asked to go over and facilitate some work because they needed to save $25 million in 1 year. Otherwise the plant was going to close. In the previous years, they'd stripped out all of the waste out of the business. They were on a skeleton crew, they'd leaned everything, the process was cop, they'd done as much as they possibly can to save money. But head office went, you need to save 25 million quid or otherwise you're closing. And at this point, the leaders did not know what to do. Now, for many, many decades, that organization, that factory had been run in a cop way. To the point, it was that cop, some of the people in the factory couldn't even recognize who the leaders were. Okay, I'm not exaggerating this, right? So, long story short, they said, right, they engaged with us and we went, well, if you need to save some money, let's ask the people that work for you. Now, this was new to them. I know this sounds so silly, but this was a new revelation because in the past, the leaders went into one building, the factory workers went into another building, the leaders made all the decisions, and they didn't really have to talk to the people in the factory, right? But now they didn't know what to do. They had to save $25 million. So we got 80 people in a room, 13 to 17% of the most influential people in that factory in a room, and we asked them the question, how can we save money? And there was fight back. Nobody wanted to say anything because they hadn't been talked to, they hadn't been empowered to actually put their views forward in the last 40 years. And one person that was in a group that I was running, it was a bit like an organisational terrorist for about 2 hours. He was flippant and sarcastic, and in the end I had to pull him pull him out and go, you know, what's going on? And he went, well, this whole thing's ridiculous. I can save the company millions. And I went, okay, how? And he went, well, it doesn't matter because they never listened to us. Control, order, predict. Because not only were their processes cop, their people were treated cop as well. So I said to him, well, Luke, now is your time to speak because we're asking the question. In the end, he came up with a system that actually stopped 8 out of 10 faults on machines for downtime. And in the first quarter, we saved Kraft saved over $5 million in downtime. And by the end of the year, they'd nearly hit the 25 million from one idea that came from a person that had been there for 25 years, but had never felt in the past that any of their ideas would have been listened to. For me, that's the difference between having a process that is cop and running a culture of people that should be ace. Because all your processes can be cop. That's fine, no problem, do it this way. We know what's going to happen, yeah? And it comes out the other end. But if your people aren't cop, if your people are cop, you're never going to find new ways of doing things. More to the point, coming back to today's session, you are never going to empower people because they will just feel like they're never going to be listened to, so they'll never step up. They'll never come up with great ideas. And dare I say it, and I mean no disrespect to leaders on the call today, but the more senior leader we get, the more distant we actually move away from the people on the ground floor doing it. And some of the best ideas that I've ever put into action from when I've been a senior leader in business before are from people doing the job on the shop floor. Okay? I remember taking over a region. I was at my first regional manager's job of dry cleaners. One of my dry cleaning managers had been in the same branch from the age of 16 and she was 64. There's probably not a lot I'm going to teach her about dry cleaning. However, there's a lot that I can take from her to help the rest of the region do their dry cleaning better, quicker, more effectively, more cost effectively, and so on and so on and so on. So, the empowerment, oh, TV's going to go off because I've been on it so far today. The empowerment is really important, but you're not going to get it if we're running a COP organisation, a COP people organisation. Helen's put that's amazing. Do you know what, Helen? It was amazing. Nearly 20, I think it was about £22 million saving from one idea from somebody on the shop floor that hadn't felt like they were able to talk to their leaders for 25 years. That's the difference. And that, for me, that's the best example I've got of taking an organisation from COP to ACE.